Attention leaders and future leaders. The way you become a better leader is by learning from others, by pushing yourself into some more personal and professional growth. And today I have three amazing leaders here who are going to share their vision for leadership, their personal journeys, and you're going to want to stay tuned. And today I have three amazing women with me. Barb, Jeanine, and Katherine, who are all ready to share their insights, their secrets on leadership. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Hello. Yeah. And so the other cool thing is each of them is also going to be part of the Dynamic Women Leadership Secrets book. And so that's why I wanted to have them here today so that they can share even more. Because after reading their pieces, I thought, wow, I know we've only kind of touched the surface. And so you're going to want to pick up the book to read their pieces in May. And in the meantime, though, they're going to give you some other insights and stories and personal experiences that they have had. But before we get into these questions that I want to ask you, I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves. So Barb, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Barb Stuhlemmer. My company is Blitz Business Success. Been in business for over 20 years now, and I help small businesses that are Canadian small businesses specifically to prepare their business so they can exit.
It's funny. There's a lot of people out there helping entrepreneurs, business owners to start businesses or come up with ideas, grow businesses, scale businesses, but people don't think of the exit strategy. You got to think of that first, really, right? Yeah, yeah, awesome. Jeanine, share a bit more about you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Barb. I'm excited to learn more about what you're doing with women on their exits. I'm the founder of On Purpose Together, and I partner with purpose-led leaders and multi-sector collaborations really to scale their impact, often their income, in a sustainable way through the quality of their relationships inside their organization as well as with partners outside, and really build thriving organizational cultures and use kind of emergent strategies, not a 5 and 10-year plan, but really attuned to the level of uncertainty and kind of the currents that we need to be navigating as we're being more responsive to both our communities and our current environment.
You mean leadership isn't just about us? I love it. My goodness, we need to be reminded, especially in this day and age, that it's not all about us. And I love that you're focusing on purpose-led leadership. Amazing. And Katherine, share more about you.
Yeah, hi, I'm Katherine Johnston. I founded Global Minds, which I've had for 15 years, first in Norway and now in Vancouver, Canada. And I work as a leadership development consultant as well as an executive coach. I've worked in 50 plus countries and really thrive working with people that want to flourish in their careers and their personal life.
Wow, 50 plus. I actually didn't know that about you. And so I might end up asking you a little different question about maybe leadership in different countries. There's probably I could do a whole episode on that. But let's dive into the questions that we have first. I want to hear a little bit more about your personal journeys in leadership. You know, a lot of times we see the fruits of the labor and we see where you are now, but we don't maybe know where you've come from. And so we'll start with Barb. If you can share a pivotal moment in your leadership journey that's shaped your perspective on leadership.
Yeah, interesting. I was thinking about this and I realized that other people saw it in me in my life. Like I didn't even have to think about it. Other people saw me as a leader and kept putting me in leadership positions, and my teachers, my family members, my bosses and stuff like that. And I didn't think anything of it. And like in kindergarten, one of the teachers said, "Here, take this person over and teach them how to do the alphabet." And it's like, okay. So like all the way through my life, it wasn't until I was in my 20s. And this is where it kind of clicked that I realized, oh, this is different than what other people get, is that I worked for a company that with a boss that I truly respected, and he had come to me and said, "I'd like you to take on the leadership or the management position in the customer service component of what we do." And I went, why are you offering me that? Like, I'm just this person. I just do all these other things, which were all impressive on their own, but they were my things, and I didn't understand it. So for me, it was someone else pointing it out that I started recognizing, oh, and it took me, 20 some odd years before I realized that I had leadership skills and they were built in somehow.
Yeah, well, there a lot of skills like we're born with them. They're innate in us. And how what a blessing that other people spoke into you that. It's also a curse though, because sometimes like you can't hide that you have leadership abilities. I know when I joined the women's group at my church, I was trying to like downplay that I could do things and not show those skills because I really wanted to just show up and receive. And so I'm sure you have your own stories about like enough, a little bit too much. But for our listeners, I want you to really think about the impact that Barb has shared in her life and think about who in your life could you speak into and show, especially for women or girls, to point out to them. So not only, oh, we're having you go and help with the alphabet here in kindergarten, but we're doing this because you have leadership skills. I think that's a really powerful insight that I hope people actually go and do. Jeanine, how about you? What was a pivotal moment that really shaped your perspective on leadership?
Yeah, I think there's one that's more a personal one, but it feels really poignant in this moment, especially here in the US context. So I had been on a many-year fertility journey to have my daughter,
Mm,
and she was born, and within a couple weeks, my dad passed within just a short time. And so I was holding just this profound bundle of joy and
wow.
an unbelievable, sort of surprising kind of grief. And the stretch to hold both and to continue to honor both has been part of my own personal journey. And I feel like particularly, in the US, but around the world right now in our political context, this idea of how do I hold my hope? How do I stay true to my vision? How do I honor the grief, the uncertainty, the noticing of the ground that keeps shifting, and continue to live into my values, live into my purpose, and not from a place of, I feel like I'm often seeing with leaders right now the sense of being maybe frozen, like waiting for the ground to get solid and steady again, or kind of a fury, a frustration, an anger, a pushing harder, a tightening of control, or
Mm,
maybe overfunction. Like I'm gonna drive through and make it happen. And that kind of freeze, fury, overfunction, they all have some insight in them. And I felt like I saw that in my own sort of grieving journey, right? That freeze component was a moment of like, in that deep stillness, there's a listening for what's wanted.
yeah.
Um, in the rage or the fury, there's a lot of energy to take action. And in
Mm,
that overfunction, I started to learn like I care deeply and I want to take action and what's mine to do and being really more precise with that. And so I would
mm.
say my own my own navigation has kind of given me a sense of some of the reactions we can go to when holding those and how we continue to live into our values and live into our hope, even when it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah. And that's true. So true for leaders that we still have to act and lead even in the hard times, and that there is joy to be found. And as you said, hope, but you gotta be in it and allow it. It's not always easy to be a leader. And even for those listening who are not necessarily calling themselves a leader right now, they experience a similar thing. So thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Catherine? What would
Yeah,
you say?
this was a great question for some morning reflection. And I sort of, flipped back through my career, and I find that it's two parts in terms of the pivotal moments. And so the first, I was, I don't know, late 20s, early 30s, working for the Coca-Cola company in Oslo
Hmm.
and responsible for implementing an ERP system across 8 countries on the same day. Big team of 20. And I had always been more of a task detail-oriented leader, and I quickly had to flip into a much more relationship communication
Mm.
oriented leader. And that was a big shift for me in a very positive way, and more aligned with my values, actually.
Mm.
So that I then left sort of the finance piece, business change, and went into consulting. And that because I realized I really wanted to focus on people development and not spreadsheets and projects. So that was the first pivotal moment. Then I
Wow.
became a consultant and worked with a lot of leaders in a lot of cross-cultural situations, learned from my own errors as a leader, and there were many. And with Lisa co-wrote a book about leadership, This Boss and Buddy Balancing Act for Today's Leader, which is what I talk about in the book with you.
Wow.
But that framework of the different styles and when do you step into which role, depending on the situation, depending on that potentially the age or the gender, that was quite pivotal for me in terms of using my experience and the experience of others to create a framework that hopefully can support leaders who find themselves in that position.
Nice. Yeah. And so not only do you have the full book that you but you're sharing that piece in the boss and the buddy in our book Leadership Secrets. And it's such a kind of a fresh way of looking at it. I know you wrote your book before, but it's a nice fresh way of looking at it. And it's interesting to hear your journey about how you realize like you're not the spreadsheet type leader. You want to be in the people based. And I forget about that. I always think of like there's different styles of leadership, there's different size of teams in leadership. And then there's also different industries or different ways that you use your leadership. Like sometimes I use it with my soccer, sometimes at church, and sometimes in business and on in my family. But I didn't really think so much about the difference between, yeah, like the spreadsheets and the people. Wow. Yeah. Good. It's so nice when you figure that out earlier on and then you go, now I'm where I'm supposed to be. So good. So good. Okay. Well, that brought out some really like lovely learnings, but let's get into some challenges because it's all not like kittens and roses and rainbows and stuff. So Jeanine, I'm curious, have you like ever faced any resistance, any biases in your leadership roles, or maybe in working with leaders? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I think so I spent 15 years as an attorney in tech. So often the
Oh,
only woman in the room doing large scale transactions, bringing multiple parties together for negotiations. And so the bias showed up in multiple ways in the work I was given or the questions about the work I was given and the assumptions about expertise and about leadership. I would say that, it's a little bit about the biases. I would say how I navigated that bias was remembering that allies matter, right? Who stands with you influences what voice is heard. And so that's something I kind of continued to build on as I taught negotiation and collaboration at Stanford for a decade. And one of the things I would often talk to my students about was, who's going to be the most powerful messenger? And maybe it's not you, and that's okay. And so, um,
yeah.
there's a moment when I was teaching negotiation at Stanford and buying a car, and I know the research about how women are treated in buying a car. And I brought one of my students to negotiate for me because I
Um,
wanted a man in that conversation for that moment. And it was more important to me that the person, he knew everything that I wanted, but we were going to do it together because I wanted to see what would happen when he showed up versus when I went by myself into the dealer. So really thinking about who is the most potent spokesperson and who is going to get the ear that you need. And sometimes being willing to both fight the biases and put ego aside to actually keep your eye on what's needed in the moment. I think the last thing I would say, and what I often do, I do a lot of work with teams around navigating change and resistance, is that, often leadership teams and the leaders will have gone through a lot of churn and conversation and discussion and pushback on what the right next step is. And when they roll it out, there's this like wish that people will just jump on board. And of course, some will. Some are going to be those early adopters, but there's always going to be that resistance. And my number one advice for leaders in those moments is to invite it, to invite the dialogue, to pull people out of a sense of denial that we can just go backwards, and really to embrace if somebody's resisting, they're often at least engaging. There's curiosity that it's a stage that they need to move through on the arc of change. And so how do you really invite it in and dialogue with it, almost as though it's part of the sales process rather than it's a blocker?
So I'm hearing a lot of perspective shifts in your answer. A few mic drop moments. I just want to repeat the one you said about the allies standing with you, and then the voice that it's heard. What was that? Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
the allies that who stands with you influences whose voice is heard.
Yeah.
So how are you paying attention to your allies?
Yes. Amazing. Yeah, and sometimes stepping down your ego. There you go. Hey, Katherine, how about you? What challenges have you faced with resistance biases?
Yeah, a couple of things came to mind. I guess it's been more age and gender. And again, working for Coke, but this time in a southern state in the US, came to one of the facilities to do these operational audits. And this, kind of gruff guy, I arrive and he's like, I've been working here longer than you've been alive, girly.
Oh,
Oh, and you'll probably be here long after I'm gone. Ha ha ha. Because I was leaving in a week, right? And so for me, it was important to use humor and diffuse the situation while not putting him down to keep, because I needed a positive, constructive working relationship for the rest of the week. Same thing. I had graduated, 4-year degree, university, go to my brother's graduation from a boarding school in Ontario. And the headmaster, oh, and when will you be joining us? I'm like, I just finished my 4-year BA. I think that might be a little redundant. Ha ha ha. So again, not taking insults personally, even if they're
yeah.
meant personally, right? But to diffuse a situation and still stand up for yourself. Like, just don't take it. You got to put something back out there.
Yes.
The one thing I want to say, because almost 20 years of my professional career is in Norway, and Norway is very female friendly. Like, there's a lot more gender equality, a lot of family friendly policies. And I really didn't work in industries that may have been more biased towards women. So I think women in the workplace, do you get promoted? Do you not get promoted? Do you get on the project? Do you not get put on the project? I think that happens more because for me as a consultant, when I'm hired, I'm brought in because I'm seen as an expert and they want my advice. So I just feel I had to qualify that because I think it can be felt more in other countries and in particularly other industries when it comes to women.
Yeah. Yeah, but your point about no matter where it happens, when it happens, when you're faced with these biases, to not just be quiet, but to also not take it personally and use some humor. That's how I get away with a lot of stuff, being able to say little comments back and or speak the hard truth to my clients. Using humor is helpful, and it makes people think, right? It makes people think. They could catch your tone in there a little bit, maybe. Thank you for sharing that, Katherine. And how about you, Barb? Have you
Well,
faced resistance, biases?
oh, yes. Yeah. Well, I love what Jeanine and Katherine have said. And I would say that a lot of the things align with things that have happened in my life as well. I would, interestingly, I don't know how, but through my life, I've always been put in positions where there's either been a woman that I'm working for. So a lot of my jobs growing up, I had women, or at the story that I shared at the first there with one of the mentors and male business owners that I worked for he was so open to having the diversity. And we had a huge diverse company that we were in, or the company was small, but it was a lot of people that were in it. And we were all very different, and yet everybody was accepted, different backgrounds. So I've been very fortunate that way. So looking out, or the societal types of biases, that there's expectations of having women can't do something, or you're not as as far along, you don't have as much money. I didn't experience them firsthand most of the time, and when I did, I would just go like, who are you? So I didn't have to use humor, which I love, Katherine, because I know when I get for myself, when I get to a place where my biggest resistance are me, not, I'm not enough, or I can't, you can't do that, or who do you think you are? I don't know where the language comes from, because no one ever just spoke that way to me. My father was, go do what you want. I didn't get to or he would say to me, I didn't get my graduation and my high school, and look at you, I don't even know what you're learning in school. I don't even understand this physics stuff or whatever you're doing. So he was, very supportive. My mom was very supportive. And I'll tell you in a minute, when we talk about some collaboration stuff, of how many incredible women have been in my life that it's made it really easy for me to just kind of go, who are you? And I'm going to share one quick story, if it's okay.
Yeah.
Jeannie talked about the car sales. And so this story, I hadn't even thought about it until you said that, but I wanted to buy a car, and I had gone into one of the higher end car real showrooms. And I had showed up. Now I had an older car that I was going to get rid of, but I was looking at buying a brand new car. And I had a suit on, and I walked into this place, and not a single person looked at me. No one talked to me, because the car that I was driving was this old car that was a clunker that was sitting in. I guess they didn't want my money, I guess is what I thought. And I walked to the back, and no one spoke to me except the little guy in the back who's selling a different brand of car, that they had two brands in this thing. And he's like, oh, hi, come on in. And I didn't even want to look at this car, but I went in, I took a test drive. I was so happy I didn't buy that car, but I would recommend them because of what he did. But I'm not going to naysay the company itself, but I wouldn't give a recommendation for that just because of how I was treated. So I just like, never mind, I don't need you. I'll go somewhere else. And I got a fantastic car somewhere else. So it was all good.
Yeah, it's funny. It reminds me of the Pretty Woman, right? And you just want to like drop all your money just to show them that you can.
Yeah.
It's
They
so
don't
funny.
deserve it though.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, we'll go to Katherine next. We're going to talk a little bit more about the collaboration that you alluded to, Barb. Um, Oftentimes, I just did a podcast about this around how women maybe choose to compete or compare instead of collaborate and connect. And so I'm curious, Katherine, how has collaboration with other leaders influenced your perspective on leadership, and specifically female leaders?
So I, again, have two thoughts here. And because I've seen it go either way,
Hmm.
like I have had either the best relationships with other female leaders or the worst.
Hmm.
Like the men are kind of in between. And I am fortunate in the career I have now, I get to choose. It's my own company. I choose who I work with. And I'm very values oriented. So I have well, first of all, one thing I've learned about myself is I am at my best and I produce the best concepts and programs when I collaborate with others. So I get a lot of energy about building on others' ideas and making something new.
Hmm.
So that's my driving force. And then I've been fortunate to find people. I have a dear business colleague. I've worked with 15 plus years, maybe 20 now, in Norway, and we are very family first. So
Hmm.
that is we support each other, and if something comes up with family, the other steps in. So having that collaboration and being able to sort of hand off and present as a united front, like you're always trying to make the other person look good, right? Even if something goes wrong, you just kind of slide in and make them shine. And I have the same philosophy when it comes to clients, like make them shine.
Hmm.
Collaboration is really key for me. And I think the one thing, and that's how we met, Diane, was at the W North conference
Yeah.
almost a year ago. That is the first all-female conference I have ever been to.
Well,
Don't know what I was waiting for. But it was very interesting because there was an atmosphere of sharing and vulnerability and openness, which does not equal weakness. But to me, it was the strength of this is who I am, this is where I am, this is what I want, how can we help each other?
Mm.
And that I think is more unique to constructive female relationships when they work.
Yeah.
I love collaboration for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm hearing some key things is this something that's good for you? People have to ask themselves, is collaboration good? And then to follow the energy of it and to make sure your values are in alignment. That's crucial. Well, how about you, Barb? The listeners are probably like, what was that thing she was going to share about collaboration? So,
Yes.
oh,
Yeah. Well, again, I think I've lived a very blessed life, but honestly, I think there's a component of the amount of gratitude that I've had through my life, gratitude for things that a lot of people don't look at when they're younger, anyhow. And I can remember writing in my teens a list of all the people that I was grateful for and the things that I'd learned from them, and they turned out to be all women. So I was lucky to, my grandmother had raised 3 children on her own in the 50s when her husband passed away, and she ran the Kincardine newspaper. So she owned that and for a few years, and she was part of the community. So she was a very strong personality. And 2 of my great aunts, one was the head of one of the school board music programs for the entire district. And then the other one had been in the war, and she was a nurse in the war, and she had just incredible stories, but she spent 30 years as a nurse. So all of these women that were in my life, all my bosses that I'd worked for were women. And I can remember being at an event and I was working and we were young. So I was like my late teens. And some of the other girls were like, you were in talking to Be the Bitch? And I went, what? And they went, Be the Bitch, the woman who is in charge of us. And I go, did you know that she's actually really nice? Like, she was just such a lovely person, and she had a lot of teenage children to look after, basically. And when they realized that I wasn't the same that way, like, I love to collaborate with the people who were in the positions to do the work that I was interested in. I wanted to see what other people had done. I wanted to know how I could be better. So I was always asking questions, and I was just fortunate to be around a lot of people that had answers. So I was lucky that way.
yeah. So listeners, did you hear the 3 action items here? 1, write down your gratitude for those people who are supporting you and teaching you and mentoring you and the things that you've learned from them. And go and speak to the people that maybe intimidate you. That's the thing. So I could give business stories, but I'll give just a quick soccer one. On the soccer field, I'm competitive, and I've come from a very high level soccer background, and now I'm in like a rec league. And but there's other competitive people, and sometimes we push each other, and sometimes there's little words said here and there. And my thing is, I need to sub for any team where there's a player that I don't like, because I need to play with them, kind of like collaborate with them, play with them, connect with them so that I can like them. Because we're allowed to sub in our league to play for other teams. And the second I do, they're my best friend because we're on the same team, right? We're not competing against each other. And so that can be taken in all places of the world, in all different areas of life. But the third thing is the curiosity. So asking the questions of these people. So sometimes collaboration isn't let's go into partnership on something, let's promote each other. It doesn't have to be that. It can be that mentor-mentee type of relationship for collaboration as well. Nice, Barb. I like it.
Well, a point to that is that you often learn whether you are the mentor or the mentee. So if you're open to learning, that happens both ways. And I would say that a lot of times the people who were my elders, who were my mentors growing up, learned a lot from me as well. So there's other stories, but we don't have time for that. So
No, I don't. Not
yeah.
today, but people can read your piece in the book and get some
Yeah.
more wisdom from you. Yeah.
Thank you.
How about you, Jeanine? Where have you had the collaboration? How has that really influenced your perspective on leadership?
Yeah, I really appreciate, Diane, your piece around actually getting a sense of what, the more you build relationship, the more there's a desire to like work together, to collaborate, to co-create. And the
Mhm.
sense of it doesn't have to be one direction, that it can be this sort of shared sense. I think I saw that, as an attorney doing deals with organizations, where whether it was a small company or a big company, or I was working at Motorola or at Google, and whether I was negotiating with somebody that was just a tiny little startup or a large organization, there was possibility, there was leverage, there was resource across the spectrum. And I bring that a lot into my purpose-led work now with leaders, where, often they're working with community members and multiple stakeholders and maybe funders. And the resource that each stakeholder brings is significant. There's a contribution to be made from every direction, and there's learning and there's growth, and there's a possibility for gratitude or receiving from each of those stakeholders as well. And so taking that moment to really get a sense. I sit on the board of World Pulse. It's a global social network for women in over 200 countries, thousands of women, and they really are focused on connecting women's voices and sharing women's stories and supporting women change makers across the globe. And I sit on the board, I have sat on the executive board for the last 8 years, but I also have done significant work with their community members, grassroots members around the world, and seeing when these groups come together, how much they each have an insight, they have resource, they have lived experience, perspective that contribute and make the organization thrive. And so where I see that collaboration is really not remembering that it isn't transactional, it isn't in one direction. It's understanding the gift, the resource, and the capacity to receive from all seats.
And how can we have everyone win? Right? Yeah. And that's why the collaborative books that I've done, so now this is the fourth in the series, Dynamic Women, Success Secrets, Confidence Secrets, Trailblazer Secrets, now Leadership Secrets. And the reason why I wanted to do it is your piece around sharing stories and sharing voices and coming together, because I kept meeting amazing women like you all who maybe they had a book, but wanted to now kind of be in that experience with others, or they didn't have a book and they felt they maybe didn't have the right to write, like the permission to write. They didn't know enough to write, have enough accolades, external accolades to be able to write. And their stories were incredible. Their expertise is amazing. And I'm like, we got to share this with more people. And so this is where I think in the collaboration, there are some people that need to step up and say, I've got a platform, I have the knowledge, I will make this happen. And then there are others in the collaboration that just have to say, Eek, yes, I think I can do it. I think I can be part of that. I don't know how, but I know that being part of this group is going to make it better. So I applaud all of you for saying yes, either for the first time or saying yes for the second or third time for being part of this book. And if there are listeners out there that are like, well, I wanted to be part of the book, how do I get? Just reach out to me, Diane at DianeRolston.com, and we can have a conversation about that. But we're not done yet, ladies. You're not off the hook. You got a rapid fire question coming. Are you ready? I'm going to start with Barb. What's one trait or skill that has been key to your success as a leader?
Yeah, I would say empathy is a huge component of my my personality. And I would say I didn't have it very well honed when I was younger, but learning about it, and now that there's a lot more research around emotional intelligence and how important empathy is and how it can be used, I start really seeing how that has been very valuable in the way that I interact with the people that I'm on a board, or when I'm teaching at the college, or when I'm working with my clients, or just the people who work for me. When you're doing that, it's been really good for reducing conflict, making sure that you have stronger relationships, and getting things done. Because there's, communication is much better because you can see what people need when you're having that kind of conversation. So it's been a really valuable component of who I am and what I do.
Okay, so empathy.
Yeah.
Jeanine, how about you?
I would say when I'm coaching or consulting, the two pieces I would say are deep sensing and truth telling. So I think often leaders are maybe not having that many people they can actually share their whole truth with, or can actually ask questions and dig deeper than what's being said. They're the ones that do that for everyone else. but to have that safe space where somebody can work with you to see what isn't yet known, what's on the edge, what isn't yet clear, and then speak truth back to you from that safe place. That's the gift.
Leaders need that. Yes, because they're that for everyone else. Okay. And Katherine, what do you say is one trait or skill that's
Yeah,
been
I think for me it's adaptability, curiosity, and love of learning. And for me, that's made me very open to ideas, open to new ideas, open to different ideas, personally and professionally, and meeting people where they are.
Nice. Well, I thought people were just going to get 3 and they got 6. That's amazing. So good. I love how it was like 1, then 2, then 3. And so listeners, I hope that you're going to like really take that list of skills or traits that have been key to Barb and Jeanine and Katherine's success and think, where do I need to turn up the volume a little bit on these ones? You can even score yourself out of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, that you're like, you've mastered this, and 1 being the lowest, and really see where am I and where could I move the needle, turn up the dial a little bit on these skills, because if these ladies didn't have them, they wouldn't be where they were or are today. So as we kind of wrap up here, thank you so much, Barb, Jeanine, and Katherine, for your time to collaborate with me on this episode, to be able to share with all of my listeners some of your more personal stories, some mic drop moments and insights, and your expertise in really bringing to this uh, all different facets of who you are and what you do. So thank you so much for that.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for
Thank you. Thanks, Diane. Thanks, everyone.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Good to meet you.
So put it in your calendars, everyone, that at the end of May, we're going to be publishing the Leadership Secrets book. We are going to have a link in the show notes so that you can go in and get yourself on the invite list to our launch party. You're not going to want to miss it. So make sure you get on the list, because you'll get reminders and the ability to sign up. And then you get to get your own copy of the book and read the incredible pieces from Barb, Jeanine, and Katherine. So if you haven't yet, hit subscribe, share with a friend, and until next time, everyone, stay dynamic. Bye.